Okay, if you've ever felt overwhelmed, in a state of hopelessness, almost as if it's just too much this time, and you're trying to figure out how on earth you can pull this off, take a deep breath. Because if there's a big enough reason why, you'll always find the how. Welcome to the R-Zone. When you put your head on that pillow tonight, you've got one question. Are you glad you did, or do you wish you had?
The R-Zone with Coach Jim Stroker.
We've all had people along the way in life who make a lasting impression. For me, one of those people was my high school basketball coach, Jim Stroker. He's coached hundreds of us teenage boys over the years and raised three of the most remarkable kids you'll ever meet.
I have coached hundreds of thousands of games right on these fields right here. But there's only one game that truly counts, and that game is your life. And you will be measured in that game by how you respond. E plus R equal O. The events, many of which are out of your control, plus your response, which is 100% on you, will equal the outcome. And now we're about to lean in on the power of your response. The R-Zone. This is a podcast to share conversations on our own hero's journey. These are stories that have shaped my life and the mindset I hope that will help shape yours. This is coaching for life. It's not where we've been. It's all about where we're going. The R-Zone is the space between stimulus and response. The R-Zone is where you have the power to choose your response.
And now, join Jim Stroker in the R-Zone.
This is Coach Jim Stroker, leadership trainer, life coach, and motivational speaker. And we were there. It was 5 a.m. And I was holding the hands of my two children. My 4-year-old son was to my left. My 2-year-old daughter was to my right. And I was holding their hands at 5 o'clock a.m., but it wasn't at home. It wasn't in our house. I was there with my wife, and we were in the ICU unit, the intensive care unit at St. Joseph's Pediatric Intensive Care. And Jake was there in an induced comatose state. He was suffering from a traumatic brain injury that had occurred 4 days before in a car accident. And Allie was on the other side. She was 2. She was paralyzed from the chest down, having trouble breathing, and stricken with pneumonia. And we were there, and all of a sudden, a nurse came through the door and said, "You've got to leave. You've got to leave now. The doctors are doing early rounds today." And that message triggered a feeling inside of 28 years earlier. 28 years earlier, our neighbor burst into my bedroom and said, "You've got to leave now. Your dad is sick, and we're going to take care of him. He'll be okay." I walked out of that house, past the EMT workers, past the policemen and firemen, and I never saw my dad again. He had a massive heart attack that night at age 48. I was 9. And when those nurses came in and said, "You've got to leave," my response was, "I will not leave." Well, about 6 minutes later, security came in and pulled my wife and myself out of that room. And I said to Jody, "It's just too much. It's just too much. I can't handle this. I'm getting in the car and I'm going to ride home and I'm going to take the dogs out and I'll be back in an hour." And I got in that car, and true story, I got in that car and for some unknown reason had this urge, had this desire to call my mentor, a teacher, a mystic, a soulmate that had come into my life for a reason, Dr. Rob Gilbert. Dr. Rob Gilbert was at Montclair State University, and for over 10,000 days had offered daily motivational hotlines. And I pushed the button that day, 973-743-4690. And Gilbert answered the phone. You've reached Success Hotline. This is Dr. Rob Gilbert. This is message number 8320. If there's a big enough reason why, you'll always find the how. I perked up. I listened to Gilbert as if he was almost talking to me, and all of a sudden he went into the story. The story was back in the 1930s, and in the 1930s, the Barnum and Bailey circus was flourishing. The big top had the lions and the clowns and the tigers and the tightrope walkers. But on the perimeter were these side shows, these strange shows that had all kinds of atypical, unique things going on. But the one show that was the most popular was called The World's Strongest Man. And people lined up, and the strong man would do 3 shows a day for the past 5 years with a sign outside of his tent. Come win $20,000. Well, on that morning, about 40 people walked into that tent. And all of a sudden, this barrel-chested strong man walked out from the curtain and said, I am the strongest man in the world. I will do 4 feats of strength that will prove to you my prowess. Bring me the phone book, he yelled to his assistant. She walks out with this phone book. He takes it, he puts it over his head and rips it right in half. Then he says, bring me the railroad tie. She walks over behind the curtain, drags out this giant piece of lumber, like 8 feet long and 7 inches wide, a piece of lumber used to tie railroad tracks together. The strong man hoisted it up over his head. And then all of a sudden, crashes it over his right quadricep, right in half. Then he says, bring me the nail. Bring it now. She walks out with this 13-inch piece of nail. He takes the nail, puts it between his teeth, and goes, and bends it into a U. He throws it to the side, and then finally he says, for my final feat of strength, bring me the suitcase. Bring me the glass, and bring me the lemon. Well, all the people in the tent were like, suitcase, glass, lemon. What's this all about? His assistant walked out, put the suitcase on the table, and handed the lemon to the strong man. He held it up over the glass, closed his eyes, and then began to squeeze. The veins in his forearm perching through the skin. And 1 drop of lemon juice squeezed finally out of that lemon. And he held that lemon up and said, open that suitcase. The strong man's assistant walked over. She flipped over the suitcase, and there were $500 bills stacked upon each other with a small sign at the top that said $20,000. The strong man looked at the case and said, that is my life savings. And if anyone here, anyone, can squeeze 1 drop of lemon juice out of this lemon, my life savings is yours. Well, hundreds of people had come up. Hundreds of strong people had come up, and no one could ever squeeze 1 drop of lemon juice out of the lemon. And that day, the strong man was getting ready to close up shop when all of a sudden, he looked in the back row, and there was a woman with gray hair, with a frail body, who stood up with her walker and put her hand up and said, I can do that. Well, all the people in the tent swung around and with their heads on a swivel. They saw this old woman with her hand up, and they began to laugh, and even the strong man started to howl, but that didn't deter her. She took her walker and she started to walk up towards that suitcase. And the laughter grew louder and louder and louder, and she kept walking and finally walked right up to that suitcase and looked at that money, and then suddenly reached into her blouse and pulled out a locket And she opened up that locket, and she looked at that picture, and she looked at that picture, and then she looked longer at that picture. And she closed up the locket, put it back in her blouse, and then took her walker and walked up to that lemon. She walked up to that lemon, and she held that lemon up high and put that glass underneath, and then just stayed there. Just stayed there. It almost seemed like 2 minutes she did nothing but just focus and concentrate on something, when all of a sudden she started to squeeze. And she kept squeezing. And when others stopped squeezing, when they ran out of fortitude, perseverance, and strength, she continued to squeeze, and she wouldn't stop squeezing. And then suddenly, a little glimmer of a smile came on her face. A smile that looked like a feeling of love or something they had never seen, when all of a sudden, not one drop, but 2 drops of lemon juice came into that glass. And the strong man stood there, shocked and stunned, with his mouth open, and finally just screamed out, "How did you do that? How did you do that?" And the woman reached into her blouse and took out her locket and opened it up and turned it around and said, "Sir, this is my grandson. I love him. He is 9 years old, and he won't make it through the week. He has leukemia without an operation. The operation cost $20,000. If there's a big enough reason why, and that why is about others, about love, you'll always find the how." I was driving in that car. It was pitch dark, and I knew inside that the how was taken care of, because my why was clear. My why and the love for Jake and Allie was bigger than my fear of how to do it. Just today, if you're in that position of feeling hopeless, helpless, feeling like it's too much, just take that ego and diminish it, throw it over the side, and focus in on love. Focus in on why you're going to do it, because the how will magically show up, and it did for us. Look, this is all about one story. It's your story. And when those things come up that seem insurmountable, go back to your why. This is Coach Stroker. Once again, the R Zone. If your team, your group, your organization needs a little source of inspiration, hope, or just a downright old pep talk, dial us up on CoachStroker.com. Have a great day.
Let's get you into the R Zone. Coach Jim Stroker has provided a bridge for inspiration and hope for people all over the world. Are you ready to transform your life and your leadership skills? Invite Coach Stroker to inspire your students or motivate your teams, offering personalized keynote speeches, dynamic workshops, inspirational life coaching, and comprehensive leadership training from Fortune 500 companies to students all over the country to nonprofits and individuals. Empower yourself to become the best version of you with Coach Jim Stroker. For speaking, workshops, training, or coaching, work with Jim Stroker. Visit CoachStroker.com to start your journey today. Let's get into the R Zone.
For more, follow Coach Jim Stroker on socials. And be sure to subscribe to the R Zone podcast, available on all major platforms, including Spotify and YouTube.
And don't forget to pick up a copy of Coach Jim Stroker's new book, Huddle Up, available now on Amazon.
This production was recorded at Ignite Creator Studios, Digital Media and Content Strategy. Visit ignitecreatorstudios.com.